Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Lobello, and I'm the Curator of Education at the El Paso Zoo, and I'm filling in for Dr. Torgerson, who is away this week. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our program. It's a zoo out here, and or out there, and I'm visiting with John Casita, who's our Curator of Animals today, and we're going to be talking about the conservation programs at the zoo. But before we get into talking with John, I would like to invite all of you to our new lecture series and other special programs we have at the zoo. And if we can start the tape right now, we do have a new series of lecture luncheon programs that meets every every month. And our next one is scheduled for Friday, February 7th at noon. It's going to be a luncheon program at the zoo, and we're going to be talking about El Paso Zoo Dreaming of Africa and the plans we have to add a whole new section of the zoo dedicated to the African continent and the animals that live there. So if you would like to come to our program, we'd ask that you call us at the zoo and ask for our reservation line for the program, which is 521-1881, and we would love to have you come. Tickets are $15. It includes lunch, it includes admission to the zoo, and the profits from the program are put into a special fund to support conservation projects in the wild and education programs at the zoo. We also have a new tour at the zoo, a new guided tour every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and you can get more information about all of our new special programs by visiting our website at www.elpasozoo.org. So today I'm very happy to have with me a friend of mine who I've known for many years, and only recently we've been working together at the zoo. John Caseta, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Rick. Nice to be here.
John, you've been working at the zoo for many years, but I've lost track. How long have you been there now?
I've been here since 1990.
1990.
Yeah.
Well, John and I also share a common ancestry. We're both from the state of New York, except that John's from New York City and I'm from Western New York near Buffalo. So it's great to work with John. He's a wonderful person to know and to work with at the zoo. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? What did you do before you came to the El Paso Zoo, and what have you done since you've been there?
Sure, Rick. Well, early on when I was a youngster and growing up in New York, I went to Syracuse to the Wildlife Management and Forestry School. And when I was there, I got interested in working with animals actively and did an internship with a veterinarian who was actually the contract vet for the Syracuse Zoo. And that led to an internship at the zoo. That led to a summer job in New York City at the Queen Zoo as a sea lion trainer for a summer. And that led to me working at the New York City Zoo system for about 6 years. And then I wanted to do something different, so I ended up doing some volunteer work at the Museum of Natural History, helped me out in the ornithology department, started volunteering in the bird section of the Bronx Zoo, then got a permanent job there and worked for them for 6 years before I came here.
So when you came to the zoo in 1990, you came right into the position as a curator of animals?
Yes.
So you've held that position. So you've been heavily involved in a lot of the expansion at the zoo in the sense that we opened up Asia in 1997,
It started in 95 with the major forest complex area fairly much being completed. The orangutans came in later because we had to do some additional work on the exhibits and wait for some animals. And then the last major piece of the puzzle was the elephant barn and the elephant exhibit, and that was completed late 96, early 97. We had Mona over there in early 97, I think it was February.
Right. So, but as curator of animals, you're the one that helps to plan a lot of the new animals that come into the zoo. So when it came to deciding whether we were going to get sun bears or something else, you had a lot to do with that?
With Asia, some of it was already decided by the design. You know, that project was funded by, I think it was a 1987 bond issue of about $5.5 million.
Right.
And the money had sort of stayed in a fund for a number of years. There were some construction delays, things like that. But by the time that came on, there were some changes, but a lot of it was sort of said and done, and we couldn't make too many changes even if we wanted to because of money concerns.
Sure. But when we do add new animals to the collection, these are animals that usually you're the one that goes out and decides what we're going to get along with a committee at the zoo, correct?
Yes, absolutely. What I try to do is act as the focus person and trying to make sure that we're working with the American Zoo and Aquarium Association, which is
Right.
our parent organization, and working with their conservation programs, in particular things that are called species survival plans, SSPs, or PMPs, population management plans.
Right.
And when we have a vacancy in the collection, when we have a new exhibit coming on, what I try to do is look at animals that'll be interesting to the public, have a good conservation message, and also fulfill some sort of role in the captive management of that population. You know, for example, we recently opened an ocelot exhibit this past year, and this is an animal that, even though there might literally be millions of animals in the wild from Texas down through South America, there's only approximately 120 within AZA facilities, and out of those there are only about 10 animals that actually should be bred. All the other animals are sort of unknown background and genetics, and there might be inbreeding questions or problems that might come forward later on if they were allowed to breed and reproduce. And so what they've done is they're working with new founders from the wild that have come from rehab organizations and new animals that have been bred from those recently arrived animals into the country, and they're going to basically start a whole new population with those animals.
So when we decide on what new animals we're going to bring to the zoo, one of the things that comes into play is just how rare the animal is in the wild? Is that something that we
many
consider?
times that's the case, but also just even rare in captivity. You know, when I
Right.
was getting prepared to come out and speak with you today and speak with the folks, you know, I was looking at some of the animals in our collection, and it's even surprising to me how rare some of the animals are.
Right.
You know, what I looked at is there's a information system that's in place for animal records for not only AZA facilities but other facilities within North America and Europe, and it's called ISIS. And you're able to look at the data on computer now, you know, directly. And I went and looked at some of the animals that we have here in our collection, and I was shocked by how few there actually are, even throughout North America, which includes Canada. For example, there's only 115 approximately Asian elephants in all of North America.
Only 150?
In the captive population, and we have 2 of those.
Right.
There's only approximately 90 Sumatran orangutans, and we have 3 of those.
Right.
And just going down the list, like I said, I was shocked by how rare some of these animals are, and I don't think certainly our visitors really know that. You know, if I don't know it as the animal curator, they probably don't know it as a visitor.
Well, you know, there's so much information out there, and it's hard for us to keep up with everything. And as you know, one of the things that we're trying to do right now is recruit volunteers that can help us stay up to date with just what's happening with many of the species, not only in captivity but also in the wild. So one of the things that we definitely want to talk about today is just what the zoo is doing to basically help support the conservation of these animals in the wild, because we both know that just keeping them in captivity is not going to save the species. And a perfect example would be the Asian elephants. You say there's only about 150 of them or so in captivity.
15
115
in North America.
in all of North America. Yeah. And most of those Asian elephants are old elephants, and they're not breeding at a rate that's going to sustain the population in captivity. So one of our major concerns is not only making sure we help to promote captive breeding, but also what about the species in the wild and what's happening with them in the wild.
Absolutely.
So when we come back from this break, one of the things we want to talk about is this new conservation fund. So we'll talk about that and what the zoo's doing to support conservation in the wild after this break.
Great.
Hello, can I help you with something?
Yeah, I'm looking for a wallet.
Oh, celebrating high school graduation.
No, I dropped out.
哦，星啊，呢個友仔要買荷包啊！
真係樣，眼碌碌好似馬騮星咁。
係啊，真係可惜啊！中學都畢唔到業。
我翻嚟啦。係。
Isn't it a little small?
Go to OperationGraduation.com.
No school today?
No, I dropped out.
You dropped out.
Go to OperationGraduation.com.
I'm visiting with John Quesada, and John is our curator of animals at the El Paso Zoo. I'm Rick Lobello, filling in for Dr. Torgerson. And at the zoo, I'm the curator of education, and we're visiting with John about the status and conservation programs at the zoo, and we're talking about the status of many of the species there. And we were just talking about the Asian elephant and what's happening with them in captivity, but we haven't really talked a lot about what's happening to them in the wild. And can you summarize for us just what is the status of the Asian elephant in the wild?
Sure. Well, you know, both species of elephants, African and Asians, are endangered in the wild. The Asian in particular is probably running into larger problems, short-term and long-term, than even the African population. Depending on whose estimates you actually believe and what may be true. The most recent one I saw today was that all the Asian elephants in the wild, the estimate is 28,000 to approximately 42,000 animals, and that's in India, Southeast Asia, including countries like Thailand and Burma and Myanmar, places like that. And one of the problems that those animals face is not only depleted numbers overall, but also they're running into problems with habitat loss as man and his needs for wild areas, turning them to agricultural areas or just expanding their cities continues. What happens is these populations of small groups of animals become fragmented, and what happens is you end up with a cluster of elephants here, a cluster of elephants here, but there's no way for those populations to mix. And so
Right.
you might have lower fertility over time. You might have animals trying to make that move, and really, some of them even go into minefields and get their legs blown off. They might get hit by lorries. There's all sorts of dangers out there. Then there's also just the typical conflicts, unfortunately, of man in a rural situation. These animals are trying to make their living while man's out there trying to raise crops for his food, for his family, and they're both looking at the same resource. And what happens is this leads to conflict, and animals die and people die. And so there's a great deal of concern about the wild population.
You know, the focus of zoos has changed, as you know, quite dramatically. At one time, we were just a place to come and see animals, but now we're starting to become more involved in supporting conservation projects because we realize we can't save all the animals in the world, and the only way that animals will be able to be saved is by protecting their habitats. So
And getting people involved.
And getting people involved, and that's where the El Paso Zoological Society and the El Paso Zoo are now working more closely together by establishing a new conservation fund. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about this conservation fund and the species that we're targeting for this year.
Well, as Rick mentioned, this is a cooperative venture in between the zoo and the Zoological Society, and it began about 2 years ago, and we're just coming onto a place where we're really focusing on what our goals and objectives will be. A few months ago, we decided that our focal species will be thick-billed parrots, which we have in our collection at the zoo, which are found in Mexico and in the past had been found in the southwest United States, but have been extirpated from the area. The other species was ocelots. As I mentioned before, ocelots in the wild, their population may actually be in the millions, but especially here in the United States, there's only a small remnant population found in southeast Texas, possibly as large as 120 animals, maybe not as many as that. And then again, the last animal we're going to be focusing on at this time is Asian elephants.
So when people make a contribution to the conservation fund, they'll be able to know that the money that they're contributing is going to go to support projects in the wild mainly?
Exactly.
Okay.
We might also be working in concert with those species survival plans I discussed.
Right.
And what their endeavors, maybe partnerships with them and not just us working independently with a project that's actually ongoing in the field, the range country.
Right.
But again, it will be partnerships between ourselves, the Zoological Society, and these other groups.
So that's an exciting new program for us to be telling everyone about, and I'm sure many people who support the zoo are very glad to hear that we have such a fund. But we're not just interested in conserving the Asian elephants and the thick-billed parrots and the ocelots. We have some other endangered species at the zoo, and why don't you tell us a little bit more about what we're doing to help them?
Sure. Well, the one thing is, again, by just our being participants in these SSP and PMP programs, by having these animals be part of our collection, we're putting them in front of the public. They're learning about them. There's the conservation education message. We're also finding places for these genetic resources to be maintained and to propagate. You know, in the past year, we've had animals such as our amber leopards and our emerald tree boas reproduce. And even though these aren't SSP species survival plan species, they're still very important, because what happens is you need to maintain these populations over time. You can't just breed them once and forget about them. You can't let related animals reproduce with one another. And so it's a cooperative venture between hundreds of facilities throughout North America to keep the population healthy, to show them to people, get them excited about these animals, and teach them something about these animals and the places they live and the concerns going on about them.
Now, one of the animals that we talk a lot about in our education programs is the Mexican wolf, and how we participate in that program. And many of the animals that have been raised in captivity are now being reintroduced into the wild, and now we have wolves being put back into the wilds of Arizona and New Mexico. The rarest large animal that I know of at the zoo is the leopard, the Amur leopard. Do you believe that it's possible that some of the cubs that are born in our zoo might someday be part of a reintroduction effort for that animal? Because I understand there's like only 30 or 40 animals left in the wild, and they could become extinct in the wild unless something's done to help the population. Do you think that's possible?
I don't know if it's possible for our progeny to be released, but I think certainly the possibility of their progeny being released in the wild might happen. Sure. Absolutely. I think the focus of the PMP initially will be to build up the captive numbers, which they are doing. Sure. There's about 150 animals in North America in captivity. I think there's a similar number between Europe and Asia. Right. And hopefully at one time, in concert with habitat protection in the area where they're found, and the areas where China, Korea, and Russia come together, in places where hopefully they can do education programs in these range areas, so that they can try to convince people not to poach the animals and hopefully be able to coexist better than they have in the past. That might be, an adjunct function of the SSP at some time. I think of the PMP. I think at this time it's probably premature to say it, because conditions in field countries can improve drastically over time or decline drastically over time, as we've seen with what's happened with mountain gorillas over the last few years and where they live. But hopefully, we can look to a brighter future for the Amur leopard, and that'll be part of it.
So we're sending off our 2 cubs that were born last year to other zoos, and so we're hoping that our leopards will breed again this year.
We've gotten permission, authorization to allow our parental pair to come together and breed again, so hopefully that'll be the case. We're sending our youngsters off to Potawatomi Zoo and to Lincoln Park Zoo, and hopefully they're going to be part of the breeding population in the future.
So what is the gestation period for these leopards?
It's a little over 3 months.
Over 3 months, so it's possible we could have cubs again this year?
It's possible. I'm not sure how much seasonality will take place with these animals. Right. And there might have to be a somewhat lengthy reintroduction period between the female and the male. Leopards tend to be fairly aggressive animals, and we're going to try to make sure that they can come together as a compatible pair again. We don't want to rush them. They've been apart for so long now, since the female's been with the youngsters and the male's been isolated for everyone's safety.
So we have about 20 endangered species in the zoo. Some of them we're trying to breed, some of them we're not, and it's all based on the recommendations of the SSP coordinator. So if people wanted to learn more about the animals that we have, one of the places they can go now is our website, because I'm sure you've seen where we now have a list of all the animals we have at the zoo. And how many species is that right now?
Oh, we have over 250 species of major animals. We have lots of invertebrates and fish, but we usually don't count those, and we probably have somewhere between 800 and 900 individuals of, again, major animals other than the
after this
birds
break,
and fish.
when we come back, we're going to have a live animal for you to see, and so we'll be back with John Casita in a few moments.
It's commonly found in the transverse segment of the colon with vascular congestion and smooth
Hey.
surface. Typically, the biopsy proved to be a tubulovillous adenoma.
It's a
cellular-
polyp. Why doesn't he just come right out and say it? It's a polyp.
Sir, do you mind?
Look at your textbook. Could I see that pointer?
We got one.
Stopping colon cancer is simple. Get the polyp early and stop colon cancer before it even starts.
Wait.
Just get the test.
I need the credits.
Get the polyp.
Attica!
Oh, shut up!
Get the cure.
Welcome back. I'm Rick Labello, the Curator of Education at the El Paso Zoo, and we're visiting this evening with John Casita, who's the Curator of Animals at the zoo. And John, you brought a snake with you today. What kind of snake did you bring?
This is Stripes. He's visiting with us today, and he's a California king snake.
A California king snake. Why is he called a king snake? I can guess why he's called a California king snake.
Mm-hmm. Well, they tend to try to eat other snakes in the wild,
Okay.
and in particular rattlesnakes.
Rattlesnakes.
And so I think that's where the name comes from.
Okay.
And Stripes has been with the zoo since he was the size of a Bic pen, if anyone remembers what a Bic pen is.
Oh, really?
And he's a robust eater, and he's been part of the education program for many years, and thousands and upon thousands of El Pasoans have seen Stripes in many different programs.
He's a very beautiful snake, and
Yep.
he's sticking out his tongue, I noticed. What's he doing there?
That's the way he's figuring out what's going on. Is there any prey items around? You know, we don't feed him snakes, we feed him mice at the zoo, and he's basically just trying to figure out what's going on here and trying to sense if there is possibly any danger or anything
Right.
to eat.
Right. Now, is it true that king snakes are immune to rattlesnake venom?
I think it is, Rick.
I think it is,
Yes,
huh?
I think there have been some studies where they do have some immunity.
Right.
Because, if that is a major part of your lifestyle, you would think that you would eventually get partially envenomated. And over tens of thousands of years, they've probably evolved as a taxonomic group to be somewhat immune. The ones
Right.
that weren't immune passed on, and the ones that were immune were able to pass on their genes
Okay.
instead of dying.
Well, how many different kinds of snakes do we have at the zoo?
Oh, I would think we have somewhere between 20 and 30 species, Rick.
And then we have some really big ones, too, over in Asia.
We have some Burmese pythons at the Forest Complex area. We have some boa constrictors that are, for the most part, used for education programs. And we
Right.
also have some red-tailed boas, I think, that are currently on display.
Right. Speaking of education programs, many of you may be interested in knowing that we are expanding our volunteer program, and if you like to handle snakes, like John is handling the one here
Or
today,
other animals.
or other animals
If you don't like
that we
handling
have in
snakes.
our education animal collection, you can become a volunteer. We do have another volunteer training session planned for February 15th, and we have a lot of people that have already applied for that session, but there's still time for you to let us know if you're interested by going to our webpage at www.elpasozoo.org and filling out an application online. So do you actually have any snakes as pets at home, or you just have them at the zoo?
No, I have very few pets. Over the years and the decades of pet ownership, I'm down to one big fat cat.
One big fat
named named Nosferatu, and he's more of a challenge. What I like to do and my wife is we like to deal with the native wildlife. We feed a lot of birds in our backyard. We have gray foxes that visit, ring-tailed cats. We have coyotes that like to come and play on the front lawn.
Right.
So we get our enjoyment from both places.
You know, when I got started in environmental education, I got started using snakes to take to schools, and it seems like the snakes that we have in our education animal collection are the favorite animals that people want us to take out and bring to schools. But when Dr. Torgerson had me on the show and I was a guest, he asked me a question that I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And that is, he asked me what my favorite animal was, and I told him it was the mountain gorilla. What is your favorite animal?
It's hard to say. Do you mean in the collection or just in general?
What is your favorite animal?
I have to be honest, something that my wife and I have been doing for the last couple of years is we mail order what are called giant mealworms, and these are things that we use here at the zoo to help feed our animals that eat live insects. And what we've done for the last couple of years is we've gotten to have really great relationships with a couple of pairs of cactus wrens and curved-bill thrashers, which are birds in our backyard. They're desert birds. And they'll come in and we'll feed them worms every day. And it's been very satisfying. We've actually had them bring progeny, and we've had probably a couple dozen baby cactus wrens in our backyards over the last couple of years, and a number of curved-bill thrashers, and it's really nice having a relationship with them. Great. So that's something I enjoy.
Well, we just have a couple minutes left in our program, and what I'd like to do is ask you a little bit deeper of a question. You've been at the zoo now for going on 13 years.
Yep.
What would you like to see happen in the remaining years that you work at the zoo? What is your big dream for the zoo?
Well, hopefully it's going to be more than one or two. Okay. But I think the zoo has a great promise and a great future ahead of it. I think with the expansion that's going on now, which people really aren't going to see for another couple of years because most of it's going to be infrastructure work.
Right.
We're finally going to be getting an off-exhibit animal holding propagation facility for small birds, mammals, and reptiles, which is something we desperately need. The sea lion exhibit is going to be finished in a few months, so that'll be something visible to the public. Sure. But I think really when Africa is completed and the zoo's current master plan is sort of fulfilled, I think they'll have an even better facility than they probably don't know that they have now.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be fascinating. They're going to see animals that they haven't seen here in decades and that people still ask us about. Right. Many, many years ago, even before I was here, there were some white rhino and some other animals, and hopefully we'll be able to bring back some of those species, zebra, right, some other things that people really associate with zoos. We've always had people come to the zoo, haven't been here before, say, where are the giraffes? Right. Where are the zebras? Where are the lions? And hopefully in about 4 years we'll be able to say, just go over there.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank you very much, John, for coming today and being with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you more and learning more about your work at the zoo and your dreams for the zoo and all the information you have about the animals there. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming in and listening to our program tonight. We'll be back with Dr. Torgerson on the next show. And this is Rick Lobello, the Curator of Education at the El Paso Zoo. Again, wishing you a nice evening, and thanks for coming to our program. It's a zoo out there.